And yeah, so all right, say hello. Um, Let me know in the comments where you're watching from on Facebook and YouTube. I'm Brian Manning, and I'm a political asylum lawyer. My law firm is based in Houston, Texas, but we help people all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. As I was just saying on TikTok, we just got an asylum approval for a client of ours who sued the government to get their interview because they were waiting for years, and they won. And that was through the Los Angeles Asylum Office. Okay. We help people, lots of clients in California, lots in Florida, lots in New York, around Chicago, and of course, lots in Texas where we're based. But we help people all over. All right. So give us a call if you want to. If you want to talk to one of our asylum lawyers about whether we might be able to help you in your asylum case, give us a call on YouTube and Facebook. That number is right above my head. On TikTok, go over to my profile, or better yet, go to YouTube and look up um, political asylum lawyers. Okay. And that's my YouTube channel where you're going to find lots of detailed information that's going to help you win your asylum case. It's going to help you put forth the strongest case possible. All right. I've got full length trainings, like full trainings that are completely free on YouTube with all my best stuff, all the insights that I learned when I was an asylum officer with the government. If you didn't know, now I'm an asylum lawyer, but I used to be an asylum officer. So I've been on the other side of the desk. I've analyzed cases. I've made these decisions. So that's what I'm sharing with you, especially on YouTube. Go over to YouTube to political asylum lawyers. Okay. All right. I'm going to take your questions. Go ahead and start leaving them in the comments. All right. And I'm happy to address them. Okay. For those of you on YouTube and Facebook that we just got started a little bit late, long story short, if you're not fully comfortable in English, don't speak English at your interview. Speak your native language and use an interpreter. Okay. The officer doesn't care which language you speak. All right. So go ahead and speak your language and use interpretation unless you feel really, really, really comfortable in English. Because what matters is that you understand everything and that you communicate effectively. And so unless you're really fluent in English, then do it in your own language. Okay. All right. Let's see. Hey there. Agatarog, you've been with us a few days now, or the last few Asylum Answers shows. Thanks for joining us again. Good to see you. And then we've got Vitali, hi from Washington State. Beautiful. Washington State is beautiful. All right. Let's see. Couldn't read that one. Okay. So, all right. On TikTok, we had a question about the applying for an EAD, which stands for Employment Authorization Document, also known as a work permit, right? The person said, I applied for my work permit and it's been 15 days since I sent it in and I haven't heard anything back yet. Should I be worried? No. It takes, so how long it takes for you to hear back depends on whether it's your first time applying for your work permit based on your pending asylum case, or if it's a renewal where you've already gotten it at least once, and then you're applying to like renew your work permit. For first time applicants applying for the first time based on your pending asylum case, then it's quick for most people. It's usually less than 2 months that they hear back, but 15 days is not that quick. Okay. Not normally. So you're fine at 15 days. If you get to more than 2 months waiting, then you can worry a little bit and call the contact center, the 1-800 number for customer service for USCIS. But if it's your renewal, if you've already gotten a work permit based on your pending asylum case and now you're applying to renew it, it's taking a lot longer, like a year and a half, to be honest with you. Well, sometimes the receipt notice comes sooner that says, hey, we got it, your application, and it's pending. But to get the actual decision is taking like a year and a half for most people. So yeah, don't get your hopes up about getting that anytime soon. Okay. All right. Let's go to some more questions. Thank you for that question. Okay. All right. So yeah, thank you for that. Good question. So okay, so let's see. We've got Ashkan says, I'm an Iranian asylum seeker from New Mexico. I just wanted to see why they published no statistics about Iranians. Well, I can tell you, Ashkan, approval rates for Iranians are high. That's not to say that they all win, though. Okay, there's certain case types that come from Iran that do tend to win. So, for example, Iranians who convert from Islam to another religion, or who just renounce Islam and stop being Muslim, those cases have a high approval rate, but they don't all win. Why? Because some officers think that people are lying about that, because people hear, oh, if I just say, if I'm Iranian, if I just say, hey, I converted, then I know I'll win asylum, because they all win. So because of that, sometimes officers think that people are lying to them about it. And so even if they're telling the truth, sometimes they get denied because the officer doesn't believe them. It's a shame, but it does happen a lot. So you do still have to be very careful about the way that you build your case and the way that you prepare. First of all, how you present it on paper, and then how you present it in person during your asylum interview. Okay. You got to be mindful about it. You got to practice. You got to be ready. You got to put together a strong case. Okay. Oh, this is nice on YouTube. By the way, on TikTok, go over to my YouTube channel. All right. It's called Political Asylum Lawyers. That's the name of my law firm, by the way. It changed. If you're wondering what's up with that, it used to be called Manning Asylum Law. I changed it. The name is now Political Asylum Lawyers. Okay. I wanted it to reflect who we are and what we do, and not just be all about me, because there is an amazing, amazing team that I work with. Okay. I've got amazing colleagues with me, both lawyers and other support staff who are awesome, and they're doing great work and changing people's lives, just like the person who got their asylum approval notice today. In fact, who's sometimes on this show watching on YouTube. Are you there? Say hello if you're there. Client who just won asylum. Congratulations to you if you watch this now or later. So yeah, go to Political Asylum Lawyers on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search for Political Asylum Lawyers. All right. We've got Matthias says, hey, I'm Matty Matthew, I'm not sure you say it, sorry, from California. I love your account. It's really helped me in doing many things concerning my asylum. Good job. Thanks for taking the time, Matthias, to say that. I appreciate you commenting. I'm glad that the content has been helpful. I think so. Matthias, it looks like it's on YouTube. For those of you on TikTok and Facebook, go to YouTube and look for Political Asylum Lawyers. That's where I've got the trainings and all the good stuff that's going to help you the most. All right. All right. What else? Okay, let's go to TikTok. All right. Oh, I have 6 years pending asylum case. Wow. If you are ready to get your interview, if you're waiting for an interview with USCIS and you've been waiting 6 years and you're ready to get your interview so that you can hopefully win asylum and move on with your life with certainty and confidence around your future in the United States and your ability to stay here permanently, then you should sue the government. Okay. You should bring a lawsuit to force them to give you your interview. So the person that I just received the news about their asylum approval, like 5 minutes before I got on live, that's what they did. They were tired of waiting. They've been waiting several years. They sued. The government said, oh, we don't want to fight this case. We'll just give him the interview if you promise to drop the lawsuit. We got the interview. We represented him at his interview, and he won today. He won asylum. Okay. So that's what you should do. If you want to get your interview, you should sue the government in what's called a mandamus lawsuit, where you're asking a federal judge to tell the asylum office that they have to give you your interview, because this wait of 6 years is not reasonable. I think that you have a pretty strong chance for success. If you've been waiting 6 years, there's a good chance that this will work for you. Okay. There's no guarantees, but at 6 years, you're in a strong position to get your interview. Okay. All right, let's go. Oh, this is an interesting question. On YouTube, Newport says, hello, can USCIS refer us to immigration court if the marriage case is denied while asylum is pending? They can, but they probably won't. So the question, the Newport is saying, hey, it sounds like you're saying if I go to my marriage-based green card case, I was at the Houston field office this morning, in fact, for a green card case, for an asylum adjustment of status green card case. But so you're talking though about a marriage-based green card case. You're saying if it gets denied, are they going to put you in deportation proceedings when you have an asylum case pending? Because remember, what normally happens if you have really pretty much any interview or even have an application at USCIS and they deny it, they say, no, you're not eligible. What they do is right then, when they make that negative decision, they look at your immigration status. And if you don't have some other status at that moment, then they put you in deportation proceedings. They refer, as Newport used the word, that's correct. They call it a referral to immigration court, but really it means your application is denied and they're trying to deport you. They're sending your case to immigration court where the government is trying to deport you. Okay. So what Newport's asking is, if they deny our marriage green card case, are they going to do that? They're going to send us to immigration court and try to deport us if I have an asylum case pending at the same time. They can, and in rare cases they do, but normally they don't. The policy of USCIS is if someone has an asylum case pending, like they're waiting for their interview, they will not send you to immigration court and try to deport you if they deny some other application. So if they deny your marriage-based green card application, but you've got an asylum case pending, they probably will not send you to immigration court. They'll say, nah, we'll let them wait and eventually have their asylum interview, and maybe they'll get asylum. Okay. So good news for you, right? All right. By the way, speaking of suing the government, today we also got news that another client is moving forward on that path. We just found out that they got their interview scheduled. They hired us to help them win their asylum case, and they hired us to sue the government. We sued the government, and today we found out that their asylum interview has been scheduled. Okay, so if you've been waiting for several years and you want to get your asylum interview, then we should talk about possibly suing the government. Okay, so give us a call on YouTube and Facebook. That telephone number is right above my head. And on TikTok, go to my profile and you'll see it there. Okay. Or in fact, there's a link in my profile on all social media where you can click and you actually schedule it on your own. Okay. Online. All right. Oh, this is interesting. So Malik Ghaniev says, if you wait 7 years for your interview and you move to another state to Chicago office, I can sue Chicago office, or will they tell me that you just moved to our office? So, okay. What Malik, it sounds like, is saying is, their case is pending at some other asylum office. Let's just say the Arlington asylum office. And you're talking about moving over to somewhere where you'll be under the Chicago office. Like they'll transfer your case from Arlington to Chicago asylum office. Then if you sue the Chicago asylum office, will they say, wait, you can't sue us. We just got your case. It's not our fault it's taking so long. No, I'm not worried about that. It's because we do name the individual asylum office as the defendant, but we name multiple people as defendants. We name the director of that office, but also the director of USCIS and the director of the Department of Homeland Security. And it's not like you're starting over. It's not like because you move and have your case transferred, like, oh, well, they're starting at day 0. So now it's reasonable for them to wait a long time. No, it's USCIS is supposed to handle your case. Okay. It doesn't matter which of their offices it's at. The short answer to your question is I wouldn't worry about it. Well, if you're going to move, I would move first, get the case transferred. Once you confirm that the case has been transferred to the Chicago asylum office, then you sue. Okay. All right. All right. Good questions. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right. On YouTube, Eugene asks, how long is waiting for the decision, your client, after the interview that got approved today? 2 weeks. So exactly, because here's how it works. At your asylum interview, near the end of the interview, usually near the end of the interview, the asylum officer explains to you what the next steps are. And one of the next steps is how you will get your decision. And there's 2 options. They're either going to say it's a mail out case where they're going to put the decision in the mail and mail it to you at some point, or they will tell you that you need to come back. Usually it's in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, come back to the asylum office and physically pick up your letter that is your decision. And so whether they choose to do a mail out or a in-person pickup usually depends on the distance that the applicant lives from the asylum office. And so in this case, where the guy won today, he lived close to the asylum office. He wasn't like in another state or something. And so it was a pickup case. And if it's going to be a pickup case, they have to give you a precise date to come in on, right? Or they choose to. And normally it's 2 weeks from the date of your interview. If you live far away, or sometimes because of other reasons, they'll schedule it as a mail out, and then there's no really firm date. It could be any time. Okay, so it's usually better if it's a pickup, in-person pickup, because there's pressure on the asylum officer and their supervisors and everyone else to get your decision done, to finalize it so that it's ready for you to come pick up in 2 weeks. However, the fact that they tell you to come back in 2 weeks does not always mean that it's actually going to happen, that you're actually going to get it in 2 weeks. Sometimes they'll call you, including like the day before the 2 weeks, and say, oh, actually, wait, don't come in tomorrow. the decision's not ready yet. We're going to mail it to you. We're changing it from a pickup to a mail out. So sometimes, that happens. So be aware that you could get that call saying, "Don't come in. We're going to mail it to you." But the answer to your question is, how long did it take? This was 2 weeks. Okay, it was a Los Angeles asylum office interview, and they said, "Come back in 2 weeks." A client went back today and picked up the decision, and it was an approval. They won asylum. Okay. All right. All right, David, who on Facebook, who has been chatting with us quite frequently on the Asylum Answers show, says, or David says, "Hello, doctor. We have an appointment." By the way, it's fun being called doctor. So, native Spanish speakers often call lawyers doctor, and us gringos in the United States get a kick out of being called doctor. It's kind of fun. We like it, so it's fun for us. We think it's cool. We have an appointment at the ICE office in Philadelphia on June this year. We've not been financially able to submit our asylum application yet, and our case is still in San Francisco. What are the chances that we will not be allowed to go back home, but deported, even though we are through immigration proceedings yet? Are you asking, David, whether you might be deported when you go to the ICE office? Is that what you're asking? Maybe rephrase the question. If that's what you're asking, well, no, I'm not really worried about that. I mean, technically speaking, or not technically, but there's very low risk. Anytime that you have contact with ICE or other federal immigration authorities, there is a little bit of risk that you could be detained or deported, but it's very low. If you've got a case pending in immigration court and you go do your check-in with ICE because they've asked you to come do the check-in, they're almost certainly not going to detain you or send you back. I can tell you they're not going to send you back. They're not going to put you on a plane that day or anything. Okay. If they find out that if they believe or find out that you've committed some big crime, then you might be arrested and detained. But other than that, the chances of you being detained or deported when you go to do your check-ins with ICE are very low. It's so low that I'm not worried about it. I wouldn't worry about it. So don't worry about it, David, is the point. Okay. All right. This is interesting. Newport asks on YouTube, what happens if your case is denied while you're abroad on a valid advance parole? Will re-entry be denied? So I assume you're talking about an asylum case where you apply for asylum and you get advance parole and you travel abroad, and you're asking, okay, well, if they deny your case while you're abroad, are they going to let you back in on your advance parole? First of all, let me just say that that is a risk of traveling abroad, is that you might miss your asylum interview. So if you go abroad for a month to another country, they might send the asylum interview notice to your house and you don't get it. And maybe no one tells you about it and you miss your interview and you don't get back in touch really quick to try to reschedule it. And they could deny your case based on that. Okay. So will you be let back in if that happens? You might not. There's a pretty high risk. There's a big risk in that case that you would not be allowed back in. Now, if you try to get back in and they say, no, we're not letting you enter on this advanced parole, then if you said, oh, but I'm afraid of being harmed in my country, I want to seek asylum, then you would get put into what's called expedited removal proceedings, where you would get to explain why you're afraid through a credible fear interview, probably. And you would be detained for at least a few hours, probably a few days, maybe in fact, much longer. So it's not good. It's not ideal. This is a reason that it's kind of risky to travel abroad on advanced parole while your asylum application is pending, is because you might get scheduled for the interview and miss it. Okay. And there's always a little bit of risk. Anytime you travel abroad, when you're not a citizen or at least a green card holder, there's some risk that you might not be allowed back in. Okay. So I think it's best really to do it only kind of for emergencies. Like if there's, you have an ailing or dying family member or something like that abroad that you need to see or help, then that's understandable. But I wouldn't take vacation in another country, okay, while your asylum application is pending. All right. All right. So Christina says, oh, this is a good follow-up question on the topic that we were discussing earlier about whether you should speak English or your native language. Christina says, I will have asylum interview for religion. I'll use Mandarin during the interview. Can I use English when I'm asked about the Bible verse? Actually, I would not do that. I would not recommend that. it's kind of annoying for the officer if someone switches back and forth between like their native language and then they sprinkle in English every once in a while. It's confusing. It just sort of makes your mind go, wait, wait, what's going on? And it's kind of jarring, and it's just a little bit frustrating for the officer. So no, I don't recommend that. I recommend that you if you're going to use interpretation, you just speak Mandarin in your case the whole time, okay? And not really any English at all, okay? Um, David, so I answered your questions. You're very welcome. Placer. All right, let's see what we have on TikTok. What to do. So someone said that they applied for asylum in 2018. They got approved and they got a green card. They applied for the green card in 2019. They've been waiting 4 years. What can they do? You're outside of the normal processing time. The normal processing time for a green card based on an asylum case, based on having one asylum, is something like 18 months. You should consider suing the government. This is something that you could sue for. So earlier we talked about how our client who won asylum today had sued the government to get their interview. Well, you can sue the government to make them do other things too, besides just give you your asylum interview. Like after your asylum interview, if you're still waiting for a decision and you applied for asylum more than like 3 years ago, then you're in a pretty good position to force them to give you that decision by suing them. Okay. Or in your case, to force them to make a decision on your green card application, whether that means scheduling it, taking the next step, which could mean an interview, or they could just make a decision and give it to you. Okay. So yeah, you should consider suing. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Yeah, yeah. So, okay, on Facebook from Amar says, more than 7 years, still no interview. How long must I wait? You're probably not going to get your interview anytime soon. USCIS changed its scheduling policies in 2018. And now when someone applies for asylum, they try to get that interview scheduled as soon as possible. So a lot of people who applied over the last couple of years, sort of since coming out of COVID, a lot of people started getting their interviews very quickly, like within 2 months, 2 or 3 months of applying. But the people who are in the backlog just keep getting pushed further back because there's more people applying for asylum every day than there are interview slots in a day. So under this scheduling policy and at the rate that people are applying for asylum now, if you're already way back in the backlog, you're not going to get your interview for the next, it'll probably be years. I mean, it could be 5, 10, 15 years, unless you sue the government. If you've been waiting 7 years and you sue the government to get your interview, you have a high chance for success. I believe that there's a pretty good chance that you will be successful in getting your interview if you've been waiting 7 years and if you decide to sue the government. Okay. All right. All righty. So Victoria says, I speak fluent English. Would you recommend I speak my native language or English in my interview? I mean, if you're really fluent, if you're like very fluent, such that you feel very comfortable in it, then yeah, maybe English is a little bit is preferable. There's a tiny preference on the officer's part probably to speak English just because it goes faster. When there's interpretation, it takes literally twice as long because the interpreter has to render everything that you say and they have to render everything that the officer says. So the interview takes about twice as long. And that's the officers often like to speed it up and they're happy if an interview can go a little bit faster. So if you're super fluent in English, then yes, do English. But again, let me just repeat, if you're not very, very, very comfortable in English, then it's best to just do it in your language with interpretation. Okay. All right. This is a good question. On YouTube, by the way, the YouTube channel is called Political Asylum Lawyers. Go to YouTube and subscribe. Political Asylum Lawyers. Search for that. Okay. Alexander says, or Sasha says, if my asylum case is pending in Miami office, and if I move to Sacramento, and change my address with USCIS, what happens after that? Do they get my info automatically? Will they schedule in Sacramento the interview? This is ridiculous. This is a major problem. It's really stupid. But what happens is when someone moves, they do a change of address online with USCIS. It's called Form AR11. That information, you should do that. That's the first step. That information, though, does not go to the asylum offices. It only goes to like the sort of central USCIS. And amazingly, the asylum offices are not connected to that same system. So they will not know you moved. The Miami asylum office will not know that you moved after you do an AR-11. So what should you do? Well, when you do the AR-11, at the end of it, it saves like a PDF. It's like, here's your AR-11 that was submitted. Basically, it gives you a copy of the online AR-11 that you submitted, gives it to you in PDF format. Save that PDF, email it to the Miami asylum office and say, I did an online change of address notification, but I wanted to let you guys know as well. And I ask that you please transfer my case to the San Francisco asylum office. That's who covers Sacramento. Okay. And then the Miami asylum office will start the transfer process of moving your case over to San Francisco. Okay. It's a really actually important thing to be aware of is that the asylum offices don't know if you just do an AR-11. So you may move and do an AR-11 online and think I'm good, but then the asylum office may send an interview notice to an old address because they don't know that you moved. They're not connected to the AR-11 system, and you might miss your interview, and you might get denied. Okay. All right. All righty. So, yeah, that's interesting. All right. Thanks for asking the question, though. Let's go. Oh, another question on this topic of interpretation. Nikolai says, if during the interview the interpreter makes an incorrect translation and you know it, can you correct the interpreter, or would it be bad? Would it affect you negatively? You can step in, you can correct them, especially if you think that it matters, like if it's something that if it's interpreted incorrectly in a way that changes the meaning significantly or says it in a way that you don't want to say it, then yes, you can say, you can in English you could say, excuse me, officer, I think there may have been some confusion regarding that last line of interpretation. Could we try that again? And you could even say to the interpreter, oh, I used the word X and you use the word Y for that, but I think maybe a more appropriate word would be Z. Could we try that again? And so the point is, and if that doesn't work, if the interpreter like argues with you or does it incorrectly again, then you should try to tell the officer in English what the problem is, like what you're trying to convey, what you think it should be in English, and to let them know that there was a discrepancy and a problem. Okay. So yeah, you can, yes, to answer your question, yes, it's okay to let the officer know if there's been an improper interpretation. Okay. So, so on TikTok, we had a comment, a question that said, my asylum case has been pending for 3 years and I have a heart condition. Can I expedite? Or no, I think they said, can I get humanitarian parole for my family? Probably not. No. But you may be able to expedite your asylum interview. Well, there's two things. You may be able to expedite your asylum interview under what are called urgent humanitarian concerns. If your doctor writes a letter that says, listen, they have this heart condition, and assuming this is true, the stress from the uncertainty surrounding their immigration situation and the uncertainty about whether they'll be able to even stay in the United States, all that is stressing them out and it's contributing negatively. It's hurting their heart condition. I think that it would help their health and be good for them if they could get this thing behind them and get done with it. That can be used as a reason to seek to have your interview expedited under urgent humanitarian concerns. Sometimes they approve this kind of thing and give you the interview soon, and sometimes they don't. But then the other separate thing is suing to get your interview. Now, remember, asking for an expedite and suing the government in a mandamus lawsuit are two different things. The goal is the same. It's to get your interview, but they're two different things with different reasons and different means of pursuing them. If you've been waiting 3 years, that's what I'm considering right now. At the time that I make this video, I'm considering that to be the threshold. So basically 3 years or more waiting, I think that you're in a pretty strong position to be able to sue. Or short of suing, you can threaten to sue. And sometimes that works, especially the longer you've been waiting, the more leverage you have, the better position you're in, right? Because if you've been waiting 6 or 7 years and you threaten to sue, and the asylum office sees, oh, he's been waiting 7 years. Well, if he sues us, he's definitely going to win his case in court. So why would we even want to fight that? So let's just give it to him. All right. But even at 3 years, I think that's where you're in a pretty good position, yes, to be able to pressure the government. Okay. So you can try both. I would say probably first try the humanitarian route with if you're having the heart condition. By the way, I'm sorry to hear about that. That sounds tough. I'm sorry you're in that difficult position. And if that doesn't work within like a month, then I would threaten to sue. I would write a letter saying, I've been waiting more than 3 years. This is not a reasonable time to wait. Please give me my interview in the next 30 days. If you don't, I'm going to have to sue you to force my interview. And then you wait 30 days. And if they haven't given it to you, then you should sue. Okay. All right. All right. So Django says on the Political Asylum Lawyers YouTube channel says, in Algeria, there was a popular movement in 2019 and many students and demonstrators were arrested. Do you think that I can get political asylum while I have an arrest warrant? I'm awaiting the interview. Thanks for commenting. I assume you mean that there's an arrest warrant for you in Algeria and that it's not legitimate. I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that what you're probably saying is that it's like politically motivated. It's not like you didn't really commit a real crime that would warrant an arrest warrant being issued for you. Then, yeah, I mean, then do you have a chance of winning? It sounds like you probably do. If a basically dictatorial regime that has persecuted a lot of people for political reasons, if they issued an illegitimate arrest warrant for you, then you probably have a chance. But it's probably more difficult than it sounds, though, to actually prove your case. Okay. There's a lot of elements that go into winning an asylum claim. It's not as easy just to say, well, my country's bad. They do bad things to people. It's not that simple. Okay. You have to show why you are at risk, and you have to show why you meet all the different requirements under the asylum law. And it's hard to do. As you probably know, the asylum approval rates are low. Okay. At the asylum offices, the approval rate was, I believe, 27% last year, 27% approval rate. Okay. That's low. That's just over 1/4 of cases getting approved. So you got to do it right. You got to present the case well on paper. And then you got to be ready to explain it in person on the day of your interview. Both those things take a lot of work and they're not easy. You have to work hard to be as prepared as possible and to put forth the strongest case possible. Okay. Wow. 9 years on YouTube. Protivo Badstrivushi. Is that Georgian? What is that? Says how fast is the suing process for the Sacramento office? Also, if the case will be transferred from Miami office, my case is pending for 9 years. Yeah, if your case is pending for 9 years, you should sue. There is a very high chance for success because you've been waiting for so long. Pretty much any federal judge, when you file this lawsuit, is going to go, what, 9 years? That's ridiculous. Yeah, you win. Yes, USCIS, you have to give them their interview. But to answer your question of like how long does the process take for Sacramento? Well, that's going to be filed in the federal court in California. That's where we would file it. It's going to, because your case will be with the San Francisco Asylum Office, and we would file this federal lawsuit in a district court in San Francisco. And it's fast. I mean, what happens is you file the lawsuit, okay, and then you have to mail a copy of like the lawsuit to the defendants, to the different people that you name as defendants in the lawsuit. And then from the time that you mail that to them, they have 60 days to respond and tell the judge what their position is in the lawsuit. Very often near the end of that 60-day deadline, they reach out to us, the lawyers, and say, oh, you know what? The government doesn't really want to fight this. If you'll agree to drop it, or at least pause the lawsuit, we'll give your client the interview. Okay. And sometimes it takes those like 60 days. Sometimes it's soon. We recently did this in San Francisco, and the lawyers for the government emailed us like 2 days after we had sent them the copy of the lawsuit after initiating it, and they said, "Oh, here's the interview. It's already been scheduled." Like they scheduled it within literally 2 days of learning that we were suing them. Okay, so sometimes it's really fast. And then how much time between you get the interview notice and the day of actually having the interview, that varies. Sometimes it's very short, like a couple weeks. Sometimes it's some months, but it's not going to be the years and years and years that you're going to probably be waiting if you don't sue. Okay. So yeah, 9 years, you're in a very strong position to sue. Okay. All right. Let's see. Akram says, "Do you think that peace between the Houthi rebels in Yemen and Saudi Arabia affect applying for asylum?" Well, it really is going to depend on the facts of your specific case, okay? And also, it's going to depend if two groups are fighting each other, and that's why you're afraid because like one or both of the sides will hurt you because they think that you support the other side. There's a good chance that could make for a decent political asylum case. But will the fact that if they stop fighting, if they say, "Oh, we're going to stop fighting, we're going to have peace," and there is peace for at least a while, is that going to hurt your case? Maybe. It depends on how durable that peace looks. Like if there's a history of short stoppages in fighting, but then they just start again, and both sides are targeting civilians like you, or I don't know, maybe you're an activist, maybe you're very involved in politics, and one of the sides is targeting people like you, then a short pause in fighting might not negatively affect your asylum case. It's hard to say, especially without knowing more about your specific case. All right. On YouTube, do you personally think that an applicant can remember everything that happened to him 6, 7, or 8 years ago? Do officers realize that situation? I understand that you cannot, and it's not reasonable to expect you to, but do asylum officers? Not really. Unfortunately, it's very sad and frustrating, but there is this expectation at the asylum office that you remember like everything from the last 20 years, little details about things. It's ridiculous, especially when we're talking about oftentimes very traumatic and difficult events that you've been through. And it's hard to think about them at all for some people, let alone to really dwell on the little details or be expected to remember little details about, well, what color was the shirt that the guy was wearing, or what exactly did they say to you? What else did they say? Did they say anything else at all? Those are the kinds of questions that you're probably going to get. And yes, they do expect you to remember, but it's okay to say, "I don't remember." Okay. If it's honesty is the best policy. All right. If you don't remember, then say you don't remember. Okay. Don't guess. Don't make things up. Don't tell the officer what you think the officer wants to hear. Rather, just tell them that you don't remember. Okay. If you keep saying, I don't remember" for everything, it can be a problem. But I still think it's better to say that if it's the truth about the thing that they're asking you about. If you truly don't remember, then tell them that you don't remember. Okay. So can you briefly explain the requirements of a gay visa in UK? No, I don't do UK immigration law at all. I just do US asylum. Okay. So in the United States, I could tell you all about that. There's not a visa per se, but you can get asylum in the United States if you fear being persecuted, if you have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of your sexual orientation or gender identity, then you can get asylum in the United States. And I assume it's similar in the UK, but I don't know because I'm not a UK asylum lawyer. Okay, I just do US law. Ooh, my case is a Lusky system says my case is 5 years old with 3 interviews and no decisions. What should I do? If you want to get your decision, you should sue the government. Okay, at 5 years, you're in a good position to pressure the government since you've been waiting for so long. Okay. Okay. Does TPS freeze the 1 year bar or the 1 year? Yeah, the 1 year filing deadline for asylum. Kind of. If you get TPS, so by the way, TPS stands for temporary protected status. This is a legal status that the government gives to people from certain countries who meet certain requirements. And It's a temporary status. Usually it's granted for 2 years, and if the US government thinks that it's still necessary, they can renew that and keep renewing it for 2-year intervals. So the question is, does it freeze the clock for purposes of the 1-year filing deadline? Because remember, you need to apply for asylum during your first year in the United States. If you come to the United States and you don't apply for asylum during your first year, you won't get asylum unless you qualify for an exception. There's 2 categories of exceptions to the 1-year filing deadline. One of them is called the changed circumstances exceptions, and the other is called extraordinary circumstances. Having TPS or having any status can count as an extraordinary circumstance. However, you would need to have had TPS or this legal status for at least some portion during your first year in the United States. So, like, let's say you got to let's say you've been here 9 months, and then you get TPS, and you have TPS for 2 years, such that at month 9 you get TPS, and then at month 18 in the United States you say, I think I want to apply for asylum. Will you get it? Is that okay? Yes, you'd be covered by the extraordinary circumstance of maintenance of status, which is kind of like a sub part of the extraordinary circumstances exception. Okay. So if you apply while you still have TPS, then you'll be okay. But like, let's say you come here and in month 13, then you apply for TPS, then you get TPS at month 13. And then at month 18, you apply for asylum. Will that be an exception? No, because you already went a full year without having any kind of extraordinary circumstance. One of the rules is that the extraordinary circumstance had to have existed at some point during your first year in the United States. Also, another important thing to keep in mind is that if you have an extraordinary circumstance or a changed circumstance, you have to apply for asylum within a reasonable time after that change occurs or after the extraordinary circumstance ends. So in the case of someone with TPS, let's say you get TPS at month 9 and you have it for, like 2 years, right? And then TPS ends and it's not renewed. And so you don't have any status. From the time that you lost the TPS status, that's what we would consider to be the end of the extraordinary circumstance. So the question then is, okay, well, did you apply for asylum within a reasonable time after TPS ended, after the extraordinary circumstance ended? And reasonable time is like anything under 2 months will definitely, almost certainly be considered reasonable. Once you get to like 3 months, it's questionable. Get to 5-6 months, probably not. So if your TPS ends, if you come in and you get TPS at month 9 and you have it through month 18, or let's say at month 33 at TPS ends, and then you apply for asylum at month 34, you'll probably be almost certainly be okay because you had the extraordinary circumstance of TPS during your first year and you applied within a reasonable time after TPS ended. Okay. That's how that works. But it's not just TPS. This is important to know. It goes for this extraordinary circumstance of maintenance of status applies to all kinds of status. So like if you come on a student visa, you may be in the United States for 8 years. If you have student status that whole time, you can apply for asylum 8 years after you came here if you still have that student status, or if you apply within a reasonable time after losing your student status, whether that's 5 years after coming here or 8 years or 15 years. Okay. Same with H-1B visas. All H-1B status, all kinds of status can help you qualify for this exception to the 1-year filing deadline of maintenance of status, which is an extraordinary circumstance exception to the 1-year filing deadline. Okay. All right. Interesting. And the line of fire says, if no lawyer will take your case because it resembles W-gate, I assume that means Watergate. And the U.S. is likely to give you the Assange treatment if you submit more evidence. Where does one turn to? Sounds interesting. You want to tell us more on this public YouTube forum, or is this sensitive such that you don't want to talk about it? But okay. So there's a follow-up message that says, human rights investigators are under attack in safe countries, and the evidence is blatantly ignored because it's so embarrassing to the reputation of the administration or admin of justice. What if USCIS responses amount to more evidence of cover-up, like claiming privacy and foreseeable harm on declaration statement, court docs and transcripts, judicial conflict, evidence, etc. Sounds interesting. I think the original question was, where do you turn to if no lawyer will take a case like this? Keep looking. Probably, I would probably keep looking for a lawyer who might. If not, then you'll have to figure out how to argue it on your own. That's tough. Okay, but I wish you all the best for sure. Okay. Adil says, "Is immigration hurt by social media?" Do you mean, Adil or Mahmoud? Do you mean, will your social media hurt you, like hurt your case? It can, yes, if that's what you're asking, yes. Sometimes immigration, USCIS does check your social media, the stuff that's public. As far as I know, and when I was an asylum officer with the government, they didn't hack into people's accounts, but things that were set to public where anyone can see it, they do sometimes check those. Not always, but sometimes. And if you put something bad there, yeah, that can hurt you. If you post something that contradicts what you're saying in your asylum case, yes, that's bad. If you talk about guns or weapons or violence, that's bad. So yeah, the answer is yes. Your social media can hurt your asylum case, and it does sometimes. I've seen people. In fact, when I was an asylum officer, I had a case like this where the person said some dumb things on their public social media page. I think it was Facebook in this case. Yeah, that really complicated their case. So, one thing, first of all, don't say and do dumb things. Try, but we all make mistakes, right? But if your social media can be shielded by setting it to private or making it such that just your friends can access it. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Aluski System says, if one of your asylum dependents in your case got married to a U.S. citizen and you forgot to update the asylum office in time, is there a problem? No, you don't have to update them on this. It's really not necessary. When you go to your asylum interview, the asylum officer, one of the things they do with you is they go through the asylum application form and they'll get down to that dependent. I'm assuming it's your child, and they'll say, oh, okay, wait, well, if the child doesn't go to the interview, they'll say, where's this child? And you can say, oh, they're not included. I do not want them to be a dependent in my case anymore. They're not eligible to be a dependent because they're married. Doesn't matter whether it's a U.S. citizen or not. If it's a child that's in your asylum claim, if they get married, no matter how old they are, if they're married, they cannot be a dependent in your claim. Okay. But it's not something that you don't have to go out of your way to tell the asylum office about it like now or ahead of time. It's something that you can sort out at the interview, and it's not a problem. Okay. All right. Yep, I know. So Kamran says, if I applied for asylum back in August of 2022 in Chicago, but I still haven't got my interview, does it mean that I'm in the backlog right now? I would say there's still a little tiny bit of hope that you might get your interview in the next few months. But if it goes a couple more months or a few more months, then I would say you're not going to get it for years, probably. So I said earlier that it was going really fast for a lot of people. Many people were getting their interviews in like 1 or 2 months after applying. But then what happened was probably about a year ago, maybe a little more than that, USCIS started prioritizing interviews for Afghans, people from Afghanistan who were brought to the United States when the Taliban took back over Afghanistan in August of 2021. And so they've been focusing on those. They've been prioritizing those, and it's pushed everyone else back. It's made it longer for everyone else. But ultimately, no one can say for sure, Kamran, about like the timeline. Sometimes people have been waiting like 9 months like you or whatever it is. Sometimes they get their interview randomly, sort of seemingly out of nowhere. But I would say if you don't get it in the next couple months, there's a very good chance that it's going to be years. Once you hit that 3-year mark of waiting, then I recommend that you sue if you want to get your interview. Okay. All right. All right. That's great. Yeah, good idea. In the line of fire says we need a DIY mandamus video. Yeah, maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do that. It's a little bit tricky. Like it's maybe a little more tricky than, well, I don't know if it's more tricky than asylum. It's a little bit tricky though, because it's federal court. In federal court, if you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, sometimes they just throw it out. So that's why it can be a little bit tricky. All right. Um, yeah, nice, nice. All right, let's see. So we've got, I'm wondering, has anyone applied for asylum in the last 5 months and applied for EAD? How long does it take to get the EAD? And did you get scheduled for an asylum interview? Please, guys, give me advice, says Shabana. I mean, if you applied 5 months ago, then you're probably you have hit the 150 days required after having applied for asylum to be eligible to apply for your work permit or your EAD based on your pending asylum case, right? So if you send that in, that's pretty fast. The time to get your EAD, your work permit approved and get the card in the mail is pretty fast for first time applicants. First people who are applying for the EAD based on their pending asylum claim for the first time, it's usually within like 2 months. So you should get it within 2 months of applying. Okay. So that's good news. Whether you will get your interview scheduled, that's harder to say. If you haven't gotten it yet after 5 months, if you, just like the last commenter that we talked with, if you don't get it in the next couple months from now, I would say there's not a very good chance of getting it soon, unfortunately. Okay. All right. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for asking. All right. We haven't talked to Scott yet. All right. So Scott says, I am from Boston. My asylum is granted. My brother is included in my asylum case, but he's still back there in my home country. So what is easier ways for my brother to get here in USA? Well, your brother can't be included in your case in the sense that unfortunately they can't be a dependent. Like he can, and he cannot get status through you. The fact that you've won asylum, congratulations, by the way, does not help your brother. You can't like bring him here on the basis of your being an asylee, unfortunately. So what are your options? Some people come to the United States on like a tourist visa or a student visa, and then they seek asylum. That's one thing that people do. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but it's something that people do sometimes. If that doesn't work, some people, if you can't get a visa, some people will go to the land border, which is very difficult. It's tricky. It's dangerous. The areas around the borders with Mexico are dangerous, and the policies change all the time in terms of who they're letting in and how you're treated once you're let in. This is changing on like a daily basis. So you might not even be allowed in. Your brother may travel all that way and put himself at risk and danger traveling through Mexico and get to the border, and they say, sorry, you have to wait in Mexico. You can't come in. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. Okay. But those are the things that people do. Okay. So on YouTube, Anna says, quick question. How possible is it to get approved for asylum for Ukrainians right now that there's war? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. We have Ukrainian clients that are not have not been targeted and personally or specifically in any way, meaning that what they're afraid of is just being hurt in the war, just like so many other civilians who have no reason in particular to be targeted, yet still end up getting killed or hurt in Ukraine because Russia is targeting civilians. They're doing terrible things to non-combatants. So can you get asylum under that circumstance? I think so. We think we've put together good arguments for why that can still qualify for asylum under the laws. But our clients in that scenario, in that circumstance, just haven't. We haven't gotten their interview or decisions yet. So I haven't tested it yet. But the short answer is, yeah, I think we can put together a pretty good case for you if you're afraid of being harmed because of the war in Ukraine and you're Ukrainian. I think we can. Okay. All right. That is it for today. Over and out until next time. Thank you for joining on the Asylum Answers Show. This number appears where you can call on YouTube and Facebook above my head. Call that number if you want to talk with an asylum lawyer at my law firm about your situation. On TikTok, go to my profile, okay? I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor. It's truly an honor to serve you in your asylum journey. So thank you, and I hope to see you again very soon. I'm going to be live again on Wednesday afternoon, probably about 3 p.m. U.S. Central Time, live to answer your questions and engage with you. So thank you for chatting with me here today, and I look forward to seeing all of you. Give us a call.